Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the meeting today of Te Committee Kaupapa of the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee on the 23rd of April 2024. We're now going to move into our opening karakia. Please feel free to join in. Me noi tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kine ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei, mauri ora. Thank you. I don't have any apologies today. We've got a full contingent with us. Moving on to public comment. My understanding is there is no public wishing to speak today. Any conflicts of interest from members? Nothing to declare. Fantastic. First up, we're moving on to our 6-monthly Indigenous biodiversity update. Please come join us at the table. Arthur as well, I don't know if you've met everyone at the table, if you want to do a brief introduction and then if there's anything you want to touch on in your report as well, but please take it as read.
Yeah, just to introduce myself to everybody, I am new head of parks and reserves, so I've not met everybody, but I'm sure in the fullness of time we will no doubt meet on a range of issues. So first thing I'd say is much appreciated that you've allowed me to come and speak to this meeting and put forward some of the things that parks and reserves have been undertaken over the last 6 months in the biodiversity area. There's a couple of things I just wanted to draw Council's attention to, and I shan't be too long because I will take it as the report is read. But you'll note from the report there is currently Council's currently consulting on increased investment to roll out the Indigenous biodiversity strategy. One key plank of that is obviously community ranger. And in terms of the community ranger, if that does get the go-ahead, then that community ranger will allow us as parks and reserves to engage far more fully than we possibly have in the recent past with some of those communities to bring to a successful outcome some of these strategic imperatives that we do have. On that basis and on the community involvement type scenario, I'd just like to update paragraph 9 of the report. So it does talk about the launch of the Muru Tupu scheme that was actually launched on the 19th as originally indicated, and it was great to see, I think, such young people engaged so fully in a piece of work that that they will probably be some of the most challenged within the future in terms of climate change. So really good to get that involvement at that early age with those children. One other thing, we haven't got much to share with you just yet on deer culling, but we are awaiting a report on that. So without further ado, thanks, Chair, and I'll hand over to councillors for questions.
Thank you, Arthur. Any questions from members? Councillor Mitchell, then Deputy Mayor Lawes.
Thanks for the report, Arthur. Just a couple of questions for me. On page 7, there's a list of plants that totals 10,000. I'm just wondering what that number 10,000 represents. Is that council's planned planting for this season?
So those 10,000 are what we're proposing to do as that public-facing campaign, but we also have 10,000 that we replace as of course through usual planting programs and replacement planting in various areas.
So this 10,000 contributes to a total target of 114,000. Is there a plan to scale up the planting over the next few years?
Sorry, I missed that last bit.
Is there a plan to scale up our planting over the next few years? We've got a target of 114,000 plants, which could take 14 years at this rate. Are we planning to scale it up?
Yeah, we are planning to scale it up. There's actually 35,000 that have been planted, and I think that's in the report somewhere. That's between ourselves and our partners in other areas. So this really is our first toe in the water just to see, to get the thing started. But yes, we would be looking at scaling up from here.
Thank you. And you mentioned a community ranger will enable council to engage a lot more directly with communities. There's a few parks identified for these particular plantings. Will that community ranger be out and visiting communities to find out what their priorities are for future planting?
Yeah, the whole idea of that position is to engage with the community and get an understanding of what the community wants to achieve in the terms of the overarching strategy. So, yeah, that will be one of the key pieces of work that position does.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Just on that question you answered about the number of plants that we're doing, and it's in partnership. Is that a partnership to get the total, or is the total 114,000 just from Hutt City?
The general thrust at the moment is that we were working with partners to get the 114,000, but we will be putting in a significant planting programme towards that total.
Thank you. So my question is, with the plants that are being planted, is there a program in place for caring for the plants afterwards if they're not planted with a community group, care group?
Crucial thing for any planting, particularly native tree and shrub, is that the first 2 or 3 years there is maintenance, else they tend to be forgotten and obviously can get overgrown, and the whole thing becomes a little bit of a waste of time, really. So yes, there is. In terms of the 10,000 we're planting this year, we have an agreement, or we're in the process of putting an agreement in place with a local contractor that once they're all in, then they will be maintained certainly for the first 2 or 3 years to establish that tree canopy, that leaf canopy, and ensure that there is a good take. And obviously planting over the winter period means we've not got quite so many concerns around water and irrigation and so on and so forth. And the areas selected are ones that we're reasonably sure are clear of rabbits and other sort of pests as well. So we are hoping for a good return and a good take on that.
One final one. So the ranger or the person you're contracting, will they work with community groups? Because just personally, I feel that's where the empowerment comes for community. So is there any direction that will be the operational style?
From our position, I think it's quite crucial that the community ranger engages fully with the community. I mean, we can do so much, but clearly the community are the people, whether I'm here, whether anybody else is here, that will carry this process through to, let's hope a very positive outcome, given, as I say, some of the stresses and strains we're under in this in the modern world, as it were.
Councillor Shaw.
Thanks for the report, Arthur. Just in regards to deer culling, the eastern hills of Stokes Valley have seen a really big increase of the amount of deer activity, with animals actually coming right down onto the streets on quite a regular basis. I'm just wondering, is this area one of the key focus points for increased culling?
Yes, it is. I mean, the unfortunate thing with where we are at the moment is there is anecdotal discussion that numbers are increasing, but the actual numbers we're taking over the last 2 years has decreased. And that's primarily because as deer become aware of those hotspots, then they move on and into different areas. So we've obviously got to look at how we, should we say, target specific areas. And I think there'll be a need to do a little bit of intelligence work to try and work out where the best places for this continuing programme are.
Councillor Mitchell, one last question.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed in Greater Wellington's long-term plan, they're planning to increase their culling of ungulates, not just deer, but goats, I think, as well. Have they been in touch with us? I know they coordinate our cull about how we can best work together and make sure we have maximum collective impact.
Yeah, I think it's as as you've indicated, it's absolutely crucial that there is an integrated approach to it. There's no point us culling deer if we're not talking closely to Greater Wellington. We won't get the most positive outcomes if we don't. So yes, there will be an ongoing liaison, and there is an ongoing liaison.
Thank you, members, for the questions. I draw your attention to page 6, and I move the recommendation that the committee receives and notes the information provided in this report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Is there any discussion? Mayor Barry.
Just to pass on my thanks to the team with the launch of Modi Tupu. It was a really good event out at East Harbour Kindergarten with the 60 plants that were planted, representing the 60 students who are at that particular kindergarten. And there has been a lot of really good feedback of people wanting to get engaged in that program. So certainly keen, I think, as we get more promotion and awareness of this out in the community, to do everything we can to help facilitate people getting involved, and particularly young people. So I think the plan looks really good, but certainly if there's any need from a resourcing point of view to deal with potentially the influx of interest, we'd be keen to understand that as well as we go through the campaign.
Any further comment? No. I then put the motion. All in favour say aye. I declare that carried. Thank you, Arthur, and welcome to the team. Now moving on to page 10, I welcome up Ewan Schutzer for the update on Council's climate change work. As always, Ewan, please take it as read, but happy for you to highlight any key components or add new information as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of additions to the report. One is regarding the vehicle fleet. So there is just been an announcement that there will be another option for four-wheel drive utes available in terms of electric or plug-in hybrid electric options later this year. So that may mean that if we go for that, then there would be an additional electrification through the fleet. So that's looking more positive, but obviously will depend on our procurement of vehicles. And then in regards to paragraph 19, just to remind councillors that the funding for the Low Carbon Acceleration Fund does not come from rates, but from the sale of carbon credits that are earned in response to forests in our reserve sequestering more carbon.
Great.
Thank you. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Ewan. Any questions from members? I've got Councillor Mitchell and then Deputy Mayor Lewis. You've got to be in quick with Councillor Mitchell.
Just waiting to see if any other hands went up. Ewan, there's a pie chart at the top of page 11 of Council's emissions, and it mentions in paragraph 5 that emissions have increased at Silverstream landfill associated with an increase in the amount of waste received due to development activity in the city. What kind of waste is it that's coming off building sites and causing emissions at the landfill?
We do have a general overview of the types of waste streams that we receive. That's construction demolition waste, that's special waste such as contaminated soil, and contaminated soil in particular was very high volumes in the second half of 2023, which is why we also had to slow down how much we were receiving. So you may recall there was a comment in one of the previous papers on that. So whereas the say the curbside collection waste stream, for example, is reasonably stable, that's we can forecast that quite accurately, if you like. Whereas development activity like C&D waste, demolition of houses, is quite project focused, so it does go up and down. Overall, the increase in emissions from the landfill has been quite, in response to that increase in volume, has been quite significant. So even though, for example, the emissions at the Wainuimatak landfill have reduced because of the emissions coming down over time since it closed over 10 years ago, that's been more than offset by the increase in emissions at Silverstream.
And what of those materials coming off building sites, what are the obvious ones for us to try and divert out of the landfill in order to reduce emissions?
Well, the wood, maybe I'll bring Jeff into this conversation as well. So when it comes to construction demolition waste, I mean, wood waste is a very significant part of that. One of the challenges with that is, though, that we don't currently have any options for managing treated wood. So unless it's co-incinerated in places like the Golden Bay cement plant, there isn't really any other option what you can do with it. So landfilling is the only avenue for that. We are working with the landfill operator on, what can we do about that? But there aren't any easy answers. Yeah. And then the other waste stream that is maybe not problematic from an emissions perspective, but it certainly does fill up the landfill much quicker is contaminated soil. And some of it is a legacy issue, like PFAS contaminated soil from airports, for example, or contaminated land. There isn't really much at the moment you can do about it, but we're also talking to, we're looking at an option for a soil remediation plant. So there is a plant under construction in Canterbury, and basically it means that you can recover some of the material out of contaminated soil by washing it, running it through washing processes, and aggregate would be one of the outputs. So that would reduce the amount going into silver stream, but some of that soil material doesn't necessarily contribute significantly to the emissions footprint.
Thanks for that. And both of those materials currently...
On that point, before Councillor Mitchell continues, anything, Jeff, you want to add as a subject matter expert in this area?
Only on the treated wood front or on timber in general, there are a couple of projects underway just investigating options for not disposing to landfill. So one of them being creating biochar in the first instance, and so a pyrolysis process for treated and untreated timber to basically lock in the carbon. And another one is we've commissioned a little piece of research on framing timber, which is treated just with boron, and whether that can be used as a mulch, surface mulch in certain settings, and what effect the boron leaching out of it will have on the soil surrounding the area and plant life and so on. So both, that and a number of other lines of inquiry into what technology is available to process wood outside of a landfill environment.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. And currently, though, both of those materials, treated wood and contaminated soil, they have to go into a lined landfill because of the chemicals in them. They can't go to a clean fill or anywhere else.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Loss.
Thank you. This is a good report, and I'm just interested in the paragraph 9, the overall council emissions have not shifted significantly. And my thinking is, have we looked at, to try and help this, looking into our IT space, knowing that the emissions from computers and PCs and technology contribute a lot in this space as well?
Yeah, so we did include emissions associated with IT services in this footprint, although the emissions are not significant in the sense when you compare it to like the landfill emissions. We're talking about a couple of order of magnitudes smaller. So some of the work we are doing is, well, first of all, we are now getting emissions data, which is good, so that we actually understand the impact that data services have. So usually the argument goes something like, don't print it, just look at it online, and therefore you have lower emissions, but that's not necessarily always true. So whenever you do a Google search or in fact use AI, which is very resource hungry, you ultimately need power and energy to make that work. That computer power needs to be, fed through energy somewhere, in some server room somewhere. So in terms of the overall council emissions, IT is not a significant contributor, but it's one of the sources that, we're looking at. And one way to influence that is to look at next time we go out for procurement to make sure we identify also the lowest options. So if a server room is located in New Zealand, the emissions are probably lower than if it's located in Australia, where the power production is mainly coal-based, as an example.
Thank you. Just a further one, would we look at refurbished computers as well instead of buying brand new in a procurement process?
I'm afraid I can't answer that question. That's something that we'll have to put to the IT department. That's
Perhaps through you, Chair, if we could get a report back on the processes around that for where
So I don't think we need a report. I think just the elected member's response will be adequate just around our procurement methodology and how we're taking into account the carbon impact and full life cost of our IT. Hold on, Councillor Brown. We've got a question of Councillor Edwards, then yourself, Councillor Brown, next.
Thanks. There's mention in paragraph 5 of insufficient gas extraction and destruction from Silverstream Stage 1 landfill. Is there been some breakdown in our systems there, or is just a fact that we can't extract all the methane and so on?
There's a couple of factors at play, but I'm glad people read the report and pick these things up. So the one is that you will be aware Silverstream, the new landfill, is slowly going over the top of the old landfill, which is Stage 1. There have been wells in the old landfill, and we are continually extracting gas from it, but some of those wells have now become unproductive. But how much gas we extract always needs to be compared to the modelled assumptions or the modelled emissions. So when we say insufficient gas extraction, that means we can't get enough gas out in relation to the modelled emissions, and therefore overall we're looking worse than we're looking worse. The second factor is that have they changed the gas plants yet?
Yeah, they're moving a lot of pipes.
Yeah, so the LMS power plant is currently getting upgraded, and because the capacity of the old engine is a lot lower than the new ones that are coming in. I think there's some construction work underway, or might have been completed by now. So effectively, if there is insufficient capacity in the engines, including the flare, to destroy the gas, then we have to prioritise some of the gas, and we've prioritised Stage 2 over Stage 1 because that's where the emissions trading scheme liability sits. Now, there are some new engines coming in, so I expect this to be a reasonably short-term impact.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. The question about the recycling and getting it down to 10%, the target that we have for 10% contamination. We had the average was 22 was 18% and then 14% last year, I think. There was going to be some measures put in place around trying to reduce that contamination that was over and above the removing the bins. Has that progressed any?
Yes, it has, although may I suggest that we address that question as part of the next waste minimisation report, because it's covered in that, if that's okay.
Happy to note that, and I'm sure Jeff can talk to that in his opening remarks.
Oh, I just had one other question is, I think, and it was to Deputy Mayor Lewis, that having gone through 2 laptops now, the refurbishment doesn't, it's a false economy that to refurbish, because the way that they are brand new, it takes more staff to keep looking after them than we have them new.
Yeah, I think in that full response for elected members, again, looking at the whole of life cost is really important, and also acknowledging what happens to our devices when they cease being used here at Hutt City Council, where they move on. So
we can comment on that part. So we do have 2 collection bins on the 2 floors, and e-waste basically goes to Earthling, who then either refurbish it if they still have value, or they take the computers apart and recover the material value. So at least for the equipment from within the council, that is in place.
Great, thank you for that information, and look forward to the full response for our elected members. Any final questions from councillors? Just doing a final scan. Councillor Mitchell, you've got it for you.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions about removing fossil gas from new developments, and it's something we discussed, I think, initially as part of the district plan review, but in paragraph 21, it talks about a couple of legal reviews and how Greater Wellington could lead this but aren't planning to. So is this back to something we could address through our district plan review, and could those legal reviews please be shared with elected members?
Yep. My understanding is we can share that. Basically, it is both reviews basically confirmed that you could regulate under the district plan, but the power technically sits with Greater Wellington, so they could also transfer the power. But that itself also has some drawbacks and complications, so it's not straightforward. So unfortunately, the view that we got to was, unless Greater Wellington is willing to pick it up, there's probably not a lot of progress we can make at a local level. So hence we decided that for now, we would focus on more of the educational part of it. So which is working, feeding into the consenting system. So when we get a consent application, and that's sort of still in the, it's not fully operational yet, but we're working on making that part of the process, is that we get a consent application if it's got gas involved, or there's some sort of gas work involved, then we go to the developer and say, okay, did you know? And can we offer some advice on the alternatives? So kind of more of a carrot approach than a stick.
And will you be able to report to us, say, in a year's time, what percentage of consents are issued with gas connections compared to before we started this education approach?
That is certainly the intention. That's why we're linking into the GoGet system that Council has. And that's actually one of the things I've asked, is that in the next couple of months, can we get a download of how many actually have had some either changes to gas or an addition of a gas connection.
Fantastic. We're now going to move the two recommendations on page 10 of our report. Recommendation 1 notes the update of the climate change work streams currently underway, and 2 notes that some work streams are new and are not explicitly covered in Council's Carbon Reduction and Resilience Plan 2021 to 2031 or the Lower Hutt Climate Action Pathway, Te Ara Whakamoa. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Is there any discussion? I then put the vote. All in favour say aye. I declare that carried. Thank you, Ian. Jeff, if you remain with us, we're now on to page 16 for the update on solid waste and waste minimisation matters. If you can touch on the question from Councillor Brown regards to what's been done around other interventions when it comes to those using our curbside collection and any other matters you wish to highlight, but do take the report as read.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To go to Councillor Brown's question, so it's briefly outlined in the report there about the contamination campaign that continues with the agency that we work with to do that. So that's the main strategy that we use, apart from removing the bins from people who've repeatedly contaminated their recycling. That contract is up for procurement as of the middle of this year, coming up soon. So we'll be working to make sure we have the best agency in place and the best strategy in place to continue that work to engage with the community on this issue. Other than that, well, actually related to that, unfortunately, the latest contamination rate for last month was 16.6%. So you can see that it is a bouncy and stubborn problem that we have, and it's very hard to for us to link the work that we do directly in terms of comms and engagement with that, the data that we get back on the actual performance that we want to see. But we continue to work on it.
Thank you, Jeff, for your report. Simon, Councillor Edwards.
I was just wondering how we benchmark. Lots of councils are running recycling lists. How do we benchmark in terms of contamination rates?
That's a good question. I don't have that information right off the top of my head. I think that's something we can follow up on and get back to you. I know that it varies quite significantly around the country, and there are a lot of different ways of reporting it and a lot of different strategies in place for dealing with it, and a lot of different methods of collecting and processing recycling as well. So but we can get some information back on that.
And just a request for that information to come in your next full report. I think that's a really good pickup, Councillor.
Absolutely.
Some comparative data, as well as any of those tactics that are being used around the country, where it's been far more successful, and understanding when a system's been embedded in a community for a number of years, what's actually the lever that's creating change. Obviously, an initial rollout, there's opportunity, but we're now embedded with our current system. So what can we do to shift that dial, particularly in relation to the new agency coming on board in the second half of this year?
Certainly, yes.
Any further questions? Councillor Shaw?
My question's in regards paragraph 7, civil share. Is this something that individuals could benefit from if they were undertaking their own demolition, or is it just company-wide?
Sure, yeah. So the app is publicly available if you want to use it. So yes, you can take advantage of that and list materials and share materials and acquire materials through it.
Councillor Mitchell?
Thank you. I've been watching some of the long-term plan engagement, specifically about the FOGO introduction, and a lot of people are concerned about the cost of it, which is significant, particularly at the moment when the cost of everything seems to be significant. I don't think we've had any clear signals from the government yet whether they will continue to require us to bring in that service or not. But just in terms of the cost, have we done any modelling around the cost of not introducing a FOGO service in terms of what kind of liability that leaves us with in terms of methane coming out of our landfills and filling that landfill faster?
That's a good question. We actually talked about that earlier today, and that work's not immediately clear in the LTP. But yes, Jörn's just squiggled down a figure that there is about 2.5 years of landfill capacity that's potentially eaten up by not doing FOGO collections in the way that we've proposed. So that would effectively shorten the life of the landfill, given the projected airspace volumes available.
2.5 years out of how many years? 30, yeah. And there would be costs associated with methane emissions coming out of that landfill in
Yes,
future?
of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Any final questions from members? Nope. I then move the recommendations on page 16, that the committee receives and notes the update on various solid waste management and minimisation matters. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Is there any discussion? I then put the vote. All in favour say aye. I declare that carried. Thank you, Jeff. We're now moving on to page 22 for the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee Forward Programme. Happy to take any questions. We've got a very light agenda today. You can see our next meeting is very packed with the flow of our work programme. I'm happy to move that the committee receives and notes the forward programme for 2024 attached as Appendix 1. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brown. All in favour say aye. I declare that carried. Agenda item number 9, questions. I've received no questions before the meeting. I'm now moving us on to our closing formalities with our karakia. If you can bring it up, please, Judy. Fantastic. Feel free to join in, everybody. Me noi tātou. Unu hia, unu hia. Unu hia i tu urutapu nui, kia wātea, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairoa i te arataka tū. Ko ia rā e rongo, whakahiria ake ki runga, kia wātea, ai rā, ko wātea, hau, pai marere. I declare the meeting formally closed at 2:35. Thank you, everybody.